I can't say I'm surprised that reportedly Netflix is not going to renew Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's deal, which is something of a huge blow to them both, because reportedly it was worth $100 million. But perhaps the reason they're not going to renew it is going to be an even bigger blow than that, because if that isn't a big blow as it is to revenue, I don't really know what is. So welcome back to the channel. We're here on Black Belt Secrets, where I talk about whatever I fancy talking about and whatever you guys ask me to talk about. And a lot of you have asked me to comment on things like this. So here we are. So Netflix not renewing this deal, hardly a surprise, because I think if you want my personal opinion, which is what I think you're here for, my personal opinion is, of course, Netflix were going to jump all over this deal from the beginning, because if they come forth with a show and spill the beans or gossip or whatever, they were going to do it, and they were going to jump on it so that they get the content for the platform. However, when it came to the With Love Meghan show, I don't think that was quite the success that they hoped for, in that it did garner a lot of attention, but I think kind of the wrong attention. And I think the wrong attention is probably something that sums up this couple over the last 5 years, which is something I'm going to come back to in a roundabout way in a minute, because it seems Prince Harry is still complaining, ironically, and I don't think he has any grounds to complain, but I'll come back to that a bit later. Let's look at this story first. So this is in The Independent. I read all sorts of newspapers and magazines, and so I'll link them below. But let's take a look at this one. It says, Netflix is not going to be renewing Duke and Duchess Sussex reported $100 million or around £73 million agreement. It says they signed a 5-year deal in 2020, so that's obviously coming to an end. They went on to feature in several Netflix productions. Their docu-series, Harry and Meghan, released in 2022, racked up 64 million viewing hours. That's quite a lot of viewing hours, but bearing in mind it's a huge platform. I've racked up millions of viewing hours myself on YouTube here, so I think myself quite lucky with you guys watching my content. In 2024, it goes on to say Prince Harry went on to release Polo, about his love for the sport, and with the series having drawn only 500,000 views, which is where we're going to come on to in just a moment as the real reason that they're not renewing this deal. So the money is going to be a big blow, but the real reason that they're not going to renew it reportedly is a massive blow. And so this has been reported in a number of different ways. People went with their deal will not be renewed, whereas The Sun went with the deal is done. No more shows to be made. And now, according to a source, I will highlight this bit because this is where it gets interesting. According to a source, now, this is usually someone very close to them, like a friend or someone. I always think of this as somebody snitching and like talking behind their back, or in some cases, I think it's the person themselves being reported about, but never mind. It says, the source said that there's no animosity from either side. Things have just run their course. Now, a source could be someone at Netflix saying, yeah, we just decided not to go ahead. You know, we're very friendly with each other, but we decided not to renew it. Or it could be Harry or Meghan saying, yeah, no, we were perfectly happy with each other. We just decided not to renew it. Or it could be someone entirely independent. I don't know. But all I know is very often in the media world, a source or a source close to, more typically, very often refers to the people themselves. So things have just run their course, apparently. And then they added that Netflix feel that they've got all they can from the couple. Netflix was clever in that they got a hell of a lot of viewers for the first documentary series and knew realistically this would prove the zenith of the content from the Montecito pair. In other words, that was always going to be the most watched stuff. The first hit, the big reveal, spilling the beans, the gossip, everything else in the first big blow up was going to get views. Let's be honest, everyone was going to watch it, whether you love them, hate them. It's a bit like the sort of pub and drink mentality. They seem to have it either way. People either celebrate and buy drinks or they commiserate and buy drinks. I don't anymore. I don't drink alcohol anymore. I haven't done for over 2 years now. But this goes on to say they're not unhappy with how things turned out. They got those initial hits and produced one of the most talked about shows of all time. It sounds very much like it came from the couple themselves, doesn't it? It goes on to say the content got weaker from there on, So perhaps it wasn't from them. Perhaps this is a mixture of sources. But frankly, 20 million a year. Anything was better than nothing. But the next bit's really interesting because this sort of goes to speak to the personalities, really, of Harry and Meghan. This report also claims that Netflix executives were, quote, well aware of the Duchess's priority now is her own brand, and that Netflix didn't want to play second fiddle to that. Publicly, it goes on to say there'll not be a statement, and of course, if things change dramatically, they'll be open to one-off projects down the line, etc. But for Harry, especially, this will be a blow. It's a huge loss of revenue. So what is the real reason? Well, it's sort of dotted through different articles, including that one, and including one from Marie Claire, which I won't be able to put on screen. And so the bottom line is, and the big reveal as to the reason it will not be renewed, will be with you in just a moment. But first, a word about one of my sponsors. In other interesting news, today marks the day where adults in the UK are required to submit to age verification by way of face scans, passports, driving license, in order to access adult websites. Now, many people might think that's a great thing. Keep children off those websites. Other people might think that that is cumbersome, big brother nanny state, and just unnecessary if they are an adult and they want to access such platforms. Now, that has led to people asking questions about VPNs. And as you know, my channel here is sponsored by NordVPN, which will become obvious as I talk to you. Now, there are obviously lots of different aspects to the Online Safety Act, which has brought about these measures, all of which I think are a positive step towards protecting children from harmful content and so on. So I'm not detracting from any of those in the slightest. What I'd like to answer very simply here is the question about VPNs and the legality, because lots of people have asked these questions. Now, just even before I answer that question, I will say that NordVPN has an age verification under their general terms of service. They require that users of the service are 18 years old, or they are authorized to act on behalf of a company and so on. But broadly speaking, there is no law against using a VPN to access any service, and it remotely changes your location to another country where such restrictions might not apply. The new Ofcom guidance to those service providers do prevent the companies from promoting or even providing links to VPN services to circumvent these restrictions, because the law requires now that these companies provide a highly effective age verification to ensure that children don't access those services, which, as I mentioned, is probably a good thing. But again, users have asked the question about using a VPN and whether that is legal. Now, Ofcom answered this question to the service providers, because they don't regulate individuals, and effectively said that they expect these service providers to mitigate against, refrain from promoting, or even providing links to virtual private network services that may circumvent those age verifications. But in short, that doesn't apply to you. Because if you are in the UK and you use a virtual private network service such as NordVPN and remotely change your location to another country, then the likelihood is those restrictions will not apply, because they probably don't apply those restrictions to other countries, because these platforms are not going to implement them unless they have to. And of course, as a partner to my channel here, I get you a discount to the service, which is 4 months extra free on top of any existing deal, using the code BlackBeltSecrets, or you can just go to the link in the description, which is nordvpn.com/blackbeltsecrets, and that should apply the 4 months free for you. And of course, you get a 30-day money-back guarantee if you change your mind. But when you see how easy it is, and that it protects you from malicious websites and downloads and flags up any information that is on the dark web anywhere, you'll very quickly realize that for less than the price of a cup of coffee, this is absolutely worth it. So get your 4 months extra free. You can change your mind if you wish using the code BlackBeltSecrets with the link in the description. And I hope that's answered some questions. And so what is it? What's the reason, according to sources, that this Netflix collaboration is not going to be renewed? Well, it's quite straightforward, but there's a bigger blow to it, and so it's a bit of a reveal. So the reason, the underlying reason, is lack of viewership, apparently. Apparently not enough people are watching it. Despite the big views that they got for the initial Big Bang reveal, there's not enough people watching it to warrant renewing the deal. And if I were going to spend £100 million on something in charge of a company, I would want there to be a good sight of viewers coming along for it. But that's not it. Apparently, most recently, the With Love Meghan show, which everybody satirized in all sorts of different ways. Even I did a bit of a review about it because so many people asked me to talk about it, comment on it, and so I did it, and that was a successful video because everybody wanted to hear what I really thought about it. So I went through the pain of watching that just so I could do the video on it. But most recently, that show, wait for it, failed to secure a place in Netflix's biannual report of the top 300 shows. So it didn't even make it into the report, apparently, in the Netflix biannual report of the top 300 shows. That is according to Marie Claire. And then they go on to quote the same thing, say things have just run their course. It's a huge loss of revenue. It's a big blow to Harry and so on. They'll consider one-off projects down the line and so on and so forth. So not just a blow to revenue, but a huge blow to ego, I would have thought as well, because I get the impression that they really do love to have the big spotlight, the big views. And I think that has resulted in a lot of backlash because ironically, putting themselves out and desperately trying to grab attention, I think has backfired and made a lot of people that perhaps did really like them not like them quite so much after all. But now moving on with Prince Harry, this is something that I find quite ironic in a lot of different ways, because bearing in mind the Netflix series, the interviews, the books, Prince Harry's book, Spare, bashing the royal family in all sorts of different ways, we get then reports like this one. Prince Harry, this is GOTV, Prince Harry speaks out on lack of support from King Charles and Prince William. It says he appeared visibly isolated and sad and even complained about King Charles and Prince William to his cousin at the coronation back in 2023. He came to the grand event alone, leaving Meghan and their children in the US. In a Channel 5 documentary, Lip Reading the Royals' Secret Conversations, professional lip readers claimed that he was expressing deep frustration over lack of communication with his family. But to put it blunt, can you blame them if that's really the case? They might be terrified that he's recording the conversations or writing things down or just going to report them and so on. Not saying he's done any of that, of course, but they would be rightly terrified that he's going to do that and just send it to the press, or that it will make its way to a new book, because he's already said, and I think recently reportedly confirmed and reaffirmed, that he has enough content for another book, Spare 2.0. And so they say that he'd expressed frustration over the lack of communication. They say he looked disappointed, disillusioned with why there was no communication sent to him. And while it's not clear who he was talking about, the expert noted that the chances are that he was referring to Charles and William. Of course, the most likelihood is he was talking about the lack of communication with King Charles and Prince William. He obviously feels isolated, but I just get the impression that he's gone too far and done too much for there to be any real coming back. People are frequently talking about, asking the questions about, is there any likelihood of him coming back to the UK, being welcomed back to the UK? I think that's probably unlikely, but not just whether he's welcomed back or not. I think it's unlikely he's going to come back, because I really don't think Meghan will come back, because I don't think they will want to bring the children back because of the whole argument over security. And it will look a little bit silly now if they do come back, having lost the battle over security, even though arguably the security would be provided, it would be adequate, etc. They say it won't, the argument continues. But for that reason, I don't think they'll want to bring the children back. And for that reason, I don't think Meghan will come back. And for that reason, I don't think Harry will want to come back. And so for that reason, I just don't think anything's going to happen. And all of that assumes that they have an invitation to come back and are welcomed back in the first place. And again, recent news reports, literally in the last 5 days, the news keep churning this out again and again. They say that they have no plans to return to the UK, despite all these crunch peace talks that they are apparently having, that it's a long road ahead amid the decision on the UK return and so on. But at the same time, can they repair that relationship at a distance from each other? Who knows? I would always like to think that it's possible that families can repair this damage, but having been a family lawyer for many years, I know that there are certain lines that once crossed, people just cannot come back from. And so this is just not going to repair. So all very grim on the Harry and Meghan front by all accounts, and I'm not sure what they're going to do. They'll probably approach another TV company for another deal. They will likely get something, because some TV company will invest to get some views out of it, doubtless. Or maybe they'll just keep plodding on with their own ventures themselves. But Let me know what you think about any of that. Please do subscribe to the channel. We're here on Secrets, what I really think about what's going on in the world. I enjoy these conversations with you. And as always, thank you so much for watching.